practice the look at that game, we want to find a sound, a sight, some sort of trigger for them to practice with. Ideally, if I had a dog who barked and lunged at other dogs or who had issues with other dogs and were maybe reactive or had a higher emotional response, I'm going to choose something that doesn't quite do that at first. So in this case, I will be using a YouTube sound. You will hear a knock, almost like a metronome, and I'm going to demonstrate kind of my timing, essentially. So let me do this. So I'm going to have my treats ready, and the sound is going to be coming from my left. Yes. 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 I was a little slow. Yes. 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 So I'm going to pause that. And what's nice about using a sound that doesn't normally trigger your dog is that there's a lot of forgiveness. What we want to do is we want to change the behavior. So instead of staring at that dog, instead of barking at that dog, instead of lunging at that dog or person, it could be anything, we are going to slowly say, oh look, there was a dog, and they're going to look back at us. The goal is that they notice the trigger, but then they just immediately look back to you. Now, one thing you might have noticed is I wasn't feeding while he was looking at the sound or finding out where the sound was coming from. You can go a step further and actually reward on the opposite side of the trigger. The whole point is though, is that I don't want you to be feeding your dog while they're staring at the trigger. So we're not at the movies, we're not eating popcorn out of our bucket. Instead, they will notice something and we'll say yes, and drop to the other side. We might feed, yes, yes. We might do that, but we aren't going to feed them as if they are watching a movie. Something else to remember is that you can feed them multiple times. So if my dog notices something, yes, I will grab a couple snacks. Here you go. Yes, good boy. And I might feed him a couple more times just to keep his attention on me. Now, one thing that you can do as well is when they find a trigger, you can say, find it, and have their heads faced on the ground. If they're looking at the ground, if they're eating cookies off the ground, they're not going to be staring at something, and that's fine by me. So you have multiple ways of kind of practicing, and it's really important to practice this in a very safe and calm environment. If I were to take another dog, for example, he's not dog reactive, but he does find dogs interesting, being 10 months old. If I put a dog in this room, it's going to be really difficult for me to get his attention back if we haven't played this game. He won't understand what yes is supposed to mean. He's not going to understand that I have good things for him when he sees these things. It's going to be a really frustrating experience. So practice with anything, cars, people, bikes, practice with a movie, practice with your favorite TV show. If they have a certain phrase that they always say, you can reward every time they say that. Our dogs are very forgiving as well. And one last thing is, when we're practicing this, you can have food in your hand and you can keep them in your hand, but I don't want you to be holding it in front of their face because they're gonna have tunnel vision. So when this happens, sometimes I'll have my hand to my side or to my back. I can say yes and push out one treat, or when they notice something, yes, and I'm going to reach into my pouch and give that treat. I don't want you to have them notice something and then go, yes. That's the wrong order. We always want to say yes or use our marker, whether that's a clicker or our vocal voice, and then give that reward. That helps make our marker really strong and helps them realize what we'd like them to do. In the beginning, your dog may stare. Your dog may stare at the sound, at the trigger. That's okay. If they are staring at the trigger, I'm going to put food in their face and I'm going to move their head. Yes. I am not gonna let them eat that treat. Yes. Oh, he doesn't like turning that way, which is fine. Yes, there we go. I'm not gonna let them eat that treat until they have removed their eyes, their concentration from the trigger. It's okay to lure your dog away like that. So for him, he's a puppy, he has a lot of big feelings right now, he's an adolescent, so we play this game all the time. But just keep in mind that we always eat away from the trigger, we always mark before we give them the reward, and that we always practice in the absence of a trigger. But hopefully you find this helpful. If you need any more tips or tricks, feel free to give me a contact, send me an email, or take a class here.